Hi there, this is Daniel with End Time Country Living, and on this video I want to show you how I am doing bench grafting here. So grafting on some new trees, some new varieties I want to set out, and so rather than going to buying a $25 or $50 tree and not being able to find the variety I want, I'm going ahead and graft it myself. I was able at the Sweet Home Propagation Fair recently here, I was able to get some rootstock, some little trees that I can graft on the variety that I want of some apples, and so I wanted to show you the process of doing that. So I am headed out to where I have my rootstock outside here. So I put it in some damp wood chips, or not wood chips, but chainsaw shavings, things like that. And so that's a good medium to use so that they'll keep the roots nice and moist. So here I have my pot that has the wood shavings in there and sawdust. And so here's my rootstock. They have the tops cut off of them. That's the way they came, and they're labeled on here what they are. So these are EMLA or M26, both about the same, just the way that they are produced. The EMLA is generally virus-free, the way it was produced. M26, pretty much the same thing, just the way they label them. I think these are they said these are virus-free ones too. So you can see here they have the roots stuck in the sawdust here. So carefully pull these out. See that these have the little roots on them. So that's what we're looking for here. So I'm going to take one in here, and I'm going to graft a Winston apple onto this one. Go ahead and put this in a little bag just to keep the roots moist. So I'm going to take it in the house. And a bench graft just means that I'm going to graft it on a bench, basically, or a little table, something like that, rather than doing it on a tree that's already growing. All right, let's go back into my house here where it's warm. It's a little bit of a very overcast, rainy day today. Thankfully the rain stopped just for a few minutes here, enough to get out here with the camera. So, got my rootstock here. Okay, so I have the little variety, the scion wood, in my refrigerator here, so I keep it in the drawer. And a little bag here. So I'm looking for Winston, so that is one that I had to buy. It should be in this bag here. Yep. All right. All right, stick it into the bench here. So this is the Winston apple scion wood. That's the variety. So this was originally named Winter King because it's kind of a late ripening variety that also keeps very well. It's supposed to keep till April, and I think it's supposed to be like mid-October, maybe early November when it ripens. So Winston, named after Winston Churchill in 1944, says it is a high quality, late keeping apple with a creamy white flesh. It's firm, juicy, and a little sharp, but mellowing to be sweet and aromatic. So it sounds like a good keeper. It's also says it's resistant to most diseases. I haven't been able to get a list of which diseases, but that's encouraging. It says it's easy to grow and crops reliably. So those are good characteristics to look for. Its parents are orange Cox pippin, which is noted for being very good flavor. It's very good characteristics flavor-wise. Orange Cox pippin itself is very hard to grow, and it doesn't produce reliably. This was crossed with a Worcester pearmain. A pearmain apple is one that is usually larger on the top and kind of tapers near the bottom, kind of like an upside down pear shaped. And so I don't know much about the Worcester pearmain, but it says hence it has resistance to most diseases, easy to grow and crops reliably. So those must be characteristics of this Worcester pearmain. And so sounds like a, fairly like more on the tart side, sounds like, which is fine. A little sharp tends to indicate that it usually has a little more acid to it than sugar, which is fine. But it does get a little more sweet in storage, so we'll see. I haven't had a chance to actually taste it yet, but this was recommended highly by Stephen Hayes. He's a YouTuber over in England. This is an English variety. It was produced over there. And so he says it's good characteristics. So we're going to give it a try here. Has a lot of the characteristics that I'm looking for. I'm looking for apples with a lot of flavor, not just bland apples. And first of all, disease resistant subcategory. If they're not disease resistant, if they're hard to grow, they need a lot of sprays, then I'm not super interested in them. There's a lot of good varieties that are disease resistant. So that's number one. Number two, I want to try to find varieties that are good keepers, ones that I can store over the winter time as fresh eating apples, not have to process them immediately. I don't want all my apples to be that way. I do like the Grafting, which comes on mid-August, sometimes early August, and we use a lot of that for drying and applesauce, and so that's fine. I'm also looking at another one, Pristine. That was an apple produced by PRI, which is 3 universities that have been working on disease-resistant apple varieties, and so that's one of theirs. And you can usually tell that it's one of their varieties because it will have PRI in the name, thus Pristine, Pristine. Not all of them are that way, but a lot of them do have that characteristic name to them. And so that one is a sweet, early ripening apple. It doesn't store a real long time, but for several months, I think it said. It's very disease resistant, and so that's one that I'm getting hopefully this year. Well, maybe next year if I can't get the scion wood yet for it. So, but other than that, a lot of the ones like Wine Crisp, Crimson Crisp, those are all the other ones I'm trying to get this year that are long storage life. Airly Red Flesh is also a fairly good keeper, and it's just also a neat variety. So I already got that one grafted this year onto some rootstock, but that's really red inside, and it's found near Airly, Oregon, which I grew up near, so that's his. It's also pretty good, fairly good tasting, and so wanted to try that one. But a lot of them are going to be ones that store really well for a homestead and for the future. I want to make sure that I had varieties that I could put into a cool room. All right, so now that I've sold you on Winston, which is a nice pretty red apple too. So anyway, let's take a look here. I'll need to get that one back in the refrigerator before too long. So I have my setup here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this label off here. It's nice that it came with a nice label for it. I may put that back on or make my own. Might just add to this here. I used to like to write the rootstock type and the year of grafting. This one's a nice printed one, so it does say scion wood on there, but that's all right. It identifies the variety here. So I got a couple things here, pretty simple. First of all, got a nice pair of shears, pruners, whatever you want to call them. These are the Felco 8. Very noted to be good. So this one is my grafting knife. Tree brand. I didn't intend it to be Tree brand, but this is one that my dad had gave me a long time ago, and wasn't one that I really used for anything else. It's kind of a real big knife, and I didn't really care for it too much because it's really hard to open. But it had a very flat blade on there, and what you want for grafting is a chisel grind. That means one bevel where you have a flat edge and then a bevel on one side, and not rather than a bevel on both sides, which most knives have. So I re-ground it down so it has a nice steep, or not steep, fairly, I think it's like 15 degrees or something like that I put on there. Chisel grind, so it's flat on this side and it's a chisel grind on this side. So that's important for getting, so when you do your cut, it gets a very straight cut rather than kind of weaving in and out, and you have a hard time controlling it. So this makes it a lot easier to control. And the other thing you'll need, let's see here, is some kind of tape. Buddy tape is the preferred, but it's about $38 or more. And I'm like, I'm not spending that much for tape, I'm sorry. The next best thing is this is electrical tape. I've used other 3M electrical tape in the past. It's been fairly good. I got this recently because I needed some more. This is Scotch Super 33 Plus, it says on there. It's a little bit more expensive. So that is what I got there. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised. It's quite thin and very stretchy, very sticky. Perfect for grafting, so that's good stuff. I'm very impressed with it. I also got some Scotch 2242 rubber electrical tape. It looks fairly decent as well. I think it's a little spendy for what you get. It's interesting. It's rubber, kind of a rubber thing, very stretchy. Again, I think it'd be fairly good. Either one, whichever. This would be another good option too. I think this is the most economical, but if you can't find this, the other is not a bad option either. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and first step, and some grafting seal, not super needed. You can get by without, or just some little latex paint. For what we're doing here, we don't really need a whole lot of it. Just need a little bit on the tip, and you could even use some electrical tape around the tip just to seal it off a little bit. So it's not super needed, but since I have it, I'm going to make use of it. Okay, so I'm going to look at my rootstock first here. Take a look here. So the first thing to do is to find out where the last root is. So here is my last root. I'm turning a little bit so you can see the root. This is the last root. So there's a node, there's a bud here, kind of where the root is coming out, and then there is another bud right here. And so this is right in between. It's kind of where I'm going to have my ground level. I'm going to bury it up to there, just so the first root is underneath the soil a little bit. And then I'm going to go up another couple nodes here and probably make my graft right about here. And so just a couple nodes above the ground level. These nodes are fairly close together. A node is what is between one bud and the next. So I'm going to go ahead and do a angle cut. Now I'm going to be cutting down on the pointy end of it, and so I want to make sure my cut is at a diagonal, about a 45 or a little greater than a 45-degree angle, more steeper. And I want to make sure that I have enough space, so I'm going to cut it right about here, like so. So I have my little angle cut, and I'm going to clean that up with my knife so the edges are nice and clean. It's important to make good contact with the outer part, called the cambium layer. Make sure the edges are all clean. Okay. And so next part of that is going to be the top part. So to make sure that these kind of match up, I want these to be about the same diameter. I see my top cyan wood is a little on the small side compared to the what we call the caliper size. So I probably should have cut that up a little higher because I was talking here and making my cut and wasn't thinking about the caliper size until I was already made my cut. So we'll have to just deal with that. Okay, so I want to cut it so that we have a nice, where the tip is, it has a nice long space before you hit a node. So I'll go ahead and cut it off like this. Cut it just a little bit lower so we don't get too much. And we need a little bit steeper than that. Okay, a little bit of a rough cut. Not terribly happy with the, sharpen the pruners again, I guess, because they're not making a nice clean cut like I'd like. So I'm going to do what's called a Z graft. I'll show you what that looks like here. So it's two pieces that look like that, and then you put them together like so. This is what it looks like here with the kind of Z shape in there, and it's a very strong graft. It gets in there, kind of supports each other, and once you tape it up, it's a very strong graft that holds together nicely. So here's some other tests that I was doing here. So then you can kind of see how it's all taped up like that. So this is with the Z graft. And this is one of my attempts at doing the Z graft. And then these need to be trimmed off before you tape it up though. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, so the flat part of the knife is down and the bevel part is on the top and you're kind of cutting towards yourself. Okay, I'm going to start with the tip up here towards the top, and I'm going to cut down like so here. Okay, so see, so I want to come in just a little bit. So here's the tip here. Come in just a little bit, right about there. Something like that. So I'm going to come up at a taper. So I don't want to go straight down. I want to go ahead and do a taper. And then I also want to make sure I get a full inch, or a little bit more than an inch. So I'm going to come down right before the bud. This is my kind of my gauge here from my examples I had. Try to do a continuous cut. Okay. So there's like that. It's probably a little bit thick there, but not terrible. Okay, so I got that piece done. I'll go ahead and do my rootstock here. So turn it over. Come down. Just don't want to come out, so you got to be real careful. Okay. See if I got that good enough here. I'm going to chop this off once I get this made here to make sure. So go ahead and put these together like so. They should end about be the same length. So I think I got it fairly good here. So the inside is kind of the main part where it's going to be making contact. And that looks pretty good. Okay. Pretty happy with that one. So I'm going to go ahead and see what I want to do next here. I want to trim my Z graft pieces, so I want to trim it just right above where these, so let's see here, good angle for you. So I'm going to trim it right about there. Right. I'll show you kind of what it looks like. So I'm going to come from the inside, so the blade needs to be on the inside and going out. just clip it. So right there. So I want to make sure that the whole oval piece is covered here. So turn it around. Oops. Put that back in there. Okay. Put it back in this little bag here. It's not absolutely critical to keep it in the bag the whole time, but if you can. Okay. So that is what our little grafting union looks like. So starting with the rootstock side, I'm going to go and grab my tape here. So starting with the rootstock side, I'm going to work my way up in a kind of a spiral going around it. So I'll grab my electrical tape on the end here. Okay, so keep it in your hand. Go ahead and do a little bit below it. Do a couple round or so. So I'm going to be kind of spinning the whole thing here. And then after the first round, I'm going to start stretching it and just kind of do a diagonal. Don't try to advance too quickly upward because you'll get little gaps in the tape, so you want to make sure there aren't any air gaps. So don't be afraid to use a few more rounds of tape to get a good seal. I'm going to try to avoid covering up the last bud node. Come back down slightly because this bud is going to want to grow, and I don't want it growing up through the tape. So just leave it so it can grow. Then go ahead and just cut my tape. Do a little bit of a stretch and tape it off there. So that little extra pressure from the stretch will make it adhere better and stick. Okay. So that is what that looks like there. It's actually extremely strong. And it's impressive how strong that union is, which is what you want. You don't want that to wiggle at all. And you want those cambium layers to start growing together. As soon as the sap starts coming up here and starts to feed this top part, then it'll be doing that through that cambium layer. Like the cells will start to grow together. Okay, so I want about 3 buds on the top here. This will count as a bud here. So this first one will count as a bud. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to go ahead and cut that off there. Don't want too much, because then that just means more for it to feed. So I'm going to cut it right above the last bud there. So I don't want a big stick above it, because that tends to go off to the side, or it doesn't grow as well. And you have this little dead stub. So that's, you're making a cut. You want to cut right above the last bud. Okay, so there we have our nice graft there. And then, before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and label this all. So I got some labels as well at the propagation fair. So these are the best ones here. I don't remember the name of these here. I'll maybe put it in the description. There's a certain company that makes these that tends to make the best ones. These are high quality ones. You can also use pie tin, aluminum pie tins, or roasting pans, things like that. Cut those up. I use those all the time just for labeling my trees when I don't have these. And then some aluminum wire that allows it to not corrode and react. If you use steel wire and against the aluminum, there'll be kind of there's a term for that. There's a reaction, basically, that causes it to kind of corrode. And so it's best to use aluminum wire with aluminum labels here. So you want to use a ballpoint pen with these. Okay, just redo it here. Okay, so big letters so you can read it easily. Try to write as cleanly and clearly as possible here. So W-I-N-S-T-O-N. S-T-O-N. Okay, so that makes a nice impression. Okay, so that makes a nice impression in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in below that M26. M26. Okay, so that is my rootstock. So if I want to know in the past why this tree is doing so well, what type of rootstock it was on, or somebody else comes along later wants to know, it's there. And then we're going to go ahead and put the year that it was grafted. Okay, so it's 2022. Okay, so several years from now, I'll like, oh, that tree was planted in 2022 or grafted that year. So it'll actually be planted next year. So anyway, this as far as put out in the ground next year. So this is going to be going into a pot and kept over the summer, and probably I might do it in the fall. So I might do it this fall. I might get it in the ground if I can get a chance to get a hole dug for it. And so I need to dig a big cavity in the ground so that it has a good chance to survive, and clean out all the clay soil that's in there in the hole, and then replace it with topsoil. And I'll show you on my tree planting video kind of how I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it right where the graft union is. That's kind of where it's going to be hanging on the best. Kind of sticky there, rubbery. So cross it, and then just do a couple twists. You don't want it super tight. Just a couple twists on there to keep it from falling off there. And you can come back down around on the bottom here, just another twist or something on the bottom there, just to make sure that it hangs on there nicely. And then we're going to go ahead and, remember, this is going to be our place where the soil level is going to be. So we'll go just below the node that's right here. That's right below the tape level there. So that's kind of what the process is there. So I'll show you how I'm going to get it potted up for the summer and put into the shade. So I'll show you what I do with that. And then the next step here, to tape off or paint off the top here. Since we got a bud right there, I want to make sure the bud is not covered up with tape. And so if you're going to do it very carefully with tape over the top or something like that, and make sure that bud can come out. And the best solution actually is to paint it off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to get my grafting tape. The preferred tape is Doc Farewell's grafting seal. So I got my lifetime supply. Figured, well, if I'm going to spend $20, I might as well. Little pints are about as expensive. So I decided to get the full meal deal, the whole thing here. This is 1 quart size, so I do quite a bit, so I'll probably never use it up, but that's okay. I can share it with somebody else. Anyway, this lid tends to get really stuck on here, so just a note. One of the things that you can do is, when it gets stuck, is to take a knife. Now, somebody else also put some wax paper over it. Now, I haven't tried that yet to see what that does, but anyway, you put a knife right in that little groove, and then you pull it back just a tiny bit, and it goes, and you hear a little crack, because the paint will kind of glue this lid shut. You kind of go around and just real gently. You don't want to do too much that you crack the lid, but you go all the way around, and that allows you to get the lid off, because inevitably there's a little bit of residue of the grafting seal gets on the top there, and then it kind of glues itself on there. So that's my trick for getting that, keeping that from, or allowing you to get it off. And then I just use a cheap little paintbrush here, then wash it off with soap and water really well after you're done. And so I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way so you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab some of the grafting seal there. And go ahead and just paint that on there. Paint along the edge, get the edges where the cambium layer, that's the most important. Something like that. And then don't get this on your clothes because it'll never come off. It'll stain your clothes, so be very careful about that. So I'm just lay it down carefully here. Put my lid back on. And go wash my brush off here, and we'll show you the next step here. Come over to my little pot department here. And there's a nice big one here. Should work. So there's a good sized pot. Something around this size or slightly smaller would be fine. Okay. And grab my shovel here. And let's head out to my topsoil pile here. Okay, so here is a little big pile of topsoil that any weeds that have soil on them, I come out and dump out here. So it has a lot of organic matter in it. So I'm going to go ahead and clean out some of the leaves that are in here. Don't need any extra leaves, there'll be plenty mixed in here. So I'm going to go ahead and shovel in a bunch of nice topsoil here. Break some of it off. It's got a lot of nice roots in there. Try to kick out some of the rocks. Don't need those in there, but they're not going to hurt. And so I'm going to fill this up halfway. Topsoil. Go ahead and put on my gloves here. I'm already getting pretty dirty here. Just like to use rubber gloves here so I don't have to go wash my hands all the time. Transition between clean stuff and dirty stuff. Always good to have a good pile of topsoil for planting trees. When I put them in the ground, need a bunch of good topsoil. So start making it. Let the weeds grow on top and let them, all their roots break down and build the soil up. Okay, that's about what I want there. I'm going to go take this over to my compost pile. Okay. Got my compost pile here. This is good shiitake mushroom compost. Stuff that they grew those shiitake mushrooms in. And break up some of the clumps here with my feet. The stomping, grinding motion works pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to take my shovel and go ahead and fill the rest of the pot up with the compost. I'm going to get it quite full because you want as much soil in the pot as possible. It'll give a nice vigorous tree. You just use a little gallon pot. I find they don't do too well. They're kind of get root bound real quick and they just don't make a very vigorous tree. Which is you want to get them as vigorous as possible when they first start out here. So something about there. Okay, go ahead and stick my shovel in there and do just a slight mix, not a whole lot. So we have a little bit of soil up at the top and a little bit of compost down near the bottom. Okay. Doing so, it tends to lower it just a wee bit. So I'm going to go ahead and take out a bunch here now. We've got it mixed. We'll get our tree. So we want to spread out the roots. Okay, got a little tree here. Doesn't look like much at this point, but has potential. You have to have faith. So the idea is to spread out the roots so that they go in all directions and they're not pointed up. You want them pointed down, if anything. And so you want to straighten out the roots. And make sure where our level is there. So I'm going to put this down like it is now. And then I will pull it up slightly to give the roots a little bit of a downward position. Okay, pull it up slightly. It's kind of a shaking motion, so nothing too strenuous on it. And that is about where I want it. Up a little bit higher. Just like that. Okay, just to get a little bit below the surface there, so these need to be watered over the summer and kept in a shady place. That's right about where I want it. So just a half an inch or so below the tape line. So then we'll go ahead and put this over in the shady area. So I want this to be out of the way of the deer and other animals, so it's going to go inside my garden fence. Oh, this is a heavy one. Right next to my other one here. There we go. Two little happy trees. So that is how I am starting my new little trees this year. Grafting them and getting them in pots here, and then this fall or maybe in the next spring I'll get them in the holes in the ground where I want them. And so this is a very inexpensive way to do it. So just for reference here, the the rootstock, got that for $3 a rootstock, and you can find it online too for maybe $5, so that's fairly reasonable. And then the Winston was at $4 plus some shipping. Maybe with I got 2 varieties, and maybe it was another $4 for shipping, $3.50. I can't remember exactly. It was fairly reasonable. It wasn't like $15 or $10, so it wasn't bad because I couldn't find it anywhere else. The Early Red Flesh, which this one is here, that one was free. I actually collected the scion wood myself. I went to the orchard that had it, and it was helping the agrarian sharing network to do a collection, and so I was able to get some there. I could have also got it at the propagation fair that they had for free, so that didn't cost me anything. And I'm going to do 3 more varieties, probably Wine Crisp and Floretta or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of it. And what was the other one I was going to do? Pristine. And so I'm going to buy those. I think they're like $5 a piece. Not bad, you know, $15 for 3 trees, plus another 3 for the rootstock. Fairly reasonable. You know, most of the time you're paying $25 for a tree. If it's decent, maybe $13 at Bi-Mart if it's a lousy tree. These are going to be high quality. I know the grafting is going to do a good job. It's good quality rootstock, and I'm starting it out right with good compost and soil in the big pots here. Like I said, I tried the gallon pots, which was recommended to me by the Home Orchard Society in Oregon, and didn't have good success with the gallon pots. It's just too small. And the next time I did a batch, they did beautifully in the big pots. They just took off. I got maybe 4 feet off of them of growth the first year, which is great. I'll show you some of the trees that I grafted a couple years ago. So here are one of the trees. This is my gold rush that I grafted about 2 years ago. And let's see, or grafted maybe 3 years ago and planted 2 years ago. I think that's the way it is. Look at the tag on there to verify here. Still got its aluminum tag. It got cut, and I don't know why. I need to make a new one for it. 2018 was the year it's grafted. So 19, 20, 21, okay. All right, it's been planted 3 years. Time flies, but you can see the nice, that's what you want to see. Look at those. Those buds are coming out. Yep, that means it's time to start grafting onto some other trees here. So that's what it looks like after you get it grafted. So you really can't see anything at the bottom there. It's got a good size to it and good structure. Been pruning it up. So you can see when you flush cut these things, they seal over completely, no problem. There's another one I cut, flush cut. You don't need to leave a little stub sticking out in order for it to heal completely. And so kind of working on getting it up fairly high, about 6 feet, and then I'm find some good branches that'll branch out. This one's a little crooked and it needs some help to go a little more out. I may just use these branches here, but I'd like to get another set of branches going a little bit higher before I have them come out and down. And here's another one here. This is a Melrose, I believe. Same batch there, so you can see the grafting junction a little bit there. You can see a little bit of the grafting paint, which kind of is eternal stuff. A little bit of a grafting. This is the grafting union right there. Right about somewhere in there. That little fatter spot is where it was grafted. So this is another 2018 vintage. So it's doing very nicely. It's up there at about 8 feet high, so that's very encouraging. And let's see what else we got over here. This is my Granny Smith. This one is not doing quite as well. It's got a little disease on there, on the trunk, so I've been spraying for that. Some lime sulfur and alcohol and other stuff to try to kill off the fungus there. So it's vigorous, doing very well, but it's got a little bit of disease. But Granny Smith is not known for being disease resistant, so. And my quince up ahead here is doing very nicely. It's leafing out very beautifully. This one hasn't produced any fruit yet for me. And this is my Liberty over here. It's doing quite well as well. That's another 2018 graft. And let's see here. And this is my little Bosque pear, which it's another 3 years before that. I don't know if I have a date on that one. This one definitely needs, this was like aluminum foil. Really cheap, but it's still there. So that is, what is that? Don't put a date on that one. Uh-oh. So that is OFMP 87 rootstock. So I'm not sure the year of that one. That was like probably 3 or 4 years old. Before that, it has not done well. It's no bigger than any of the other ones I did in 2018. So I'm not super happy. It struggled. It struggled. It was one that I did in a gallon pot. This is one I bought. This is a Brayburn. It's not terrible. Anyway, that's my Brayburn. It's a little bit bigger. I planted it the same 2018. I think I planted that one. And this one is my Ida Red. This is a good keeper. Someone said it didn't taste very good, but I thought it was tasted pretty good. That's a 2018. It's an M7 rootstock, about the same size. It's kind of a large dwarf. I was told they were semi-dwarf, but later on someone said they were just dwarf. So I don't know. Dwarf and semi-dwarf is kind of a ambiguous term. So what is it, 12 feet tall tree or something like that? Of course I'm not going to have it that tall. Anyway, it's a dwarfing rootstock of some type. Anyway, M7. Supposed to sucker more and not be quite as great as M26. I didn't know, I just tried 2 of them at the time. Anyway, it's done fairly well. It's got good height on there, good 8 feet on that one. Let's see what else we got over here. And this is my older group here. This is my Liberty, which I grafted onto a M27, way too dwarfing. That's extra dwarf, and it hasn't done terribly well. And it's getting diseased. Over this part of the orchard is getting very diseased with canker. And so we'll see here. I may have to cut this all out. Hopefully not. This is my Golden Delicious. It's probably, I don't know how many years old it is. It must be like 8 or 9 years old. It's produced nicely for me. And my plum tree, which is about the same as the Golden Delicious. It started to produce the last few years and done very nicely. So, see, I'm doing a little bit of a training on it there. Train the branches down so they're not going straight up. Branches apparently have a way to turn on fruiting when they're more horizontal. Like if you train them down, they will be more producing. They'll produce a lot more fruit, like change the hormones or something in the branch. So anyway, that's what I would recommend here as far as a low-cost way of getting a lot of trees. You know, when you get 2 trees, $50 for 2 trees, you know, so what? We can afford it. But when you start doing, you know, 8, 9, 10 trees, you want to get more done, or even, you know, 5. That gets kind of expensive at $25 a tree, or maybe $35 a tree, and so that gets up there. So keeping the price down is good. Anyway, that's how I'm doing mine. It's going to take maybe a couple years longer to get them up to size and fruiting. Doing it this way, not a big deal. And more vigorous, and so I've had actually better success. I bought some trees from Bi-Mart, which have done very poorly, and so I wouldn't recommend getting them at Bi-Mart. Get it from a reputable nursery, but then you're going to pay quite a bit for them. Even bare root, they're going to be at least 15 for a bare root tree, and you got to jump on it. Now is too late. March 23, too late. It's going to be hard to find anything. I'm also having trouble finding scion wood right now, but because they're going to pot them up now. So that's when they jump. The price jumps. As soon as they pot them up, then the price jumps. And then trying to find unique varieties that you like is also going to be a challenge too. And so that's why I'm doing the grafting, so I get the exact varieties I want that are disease resistant, that are long keepers, have good flavor. Fuji is kind of disease prone, doesn't have great flavor. It's a good keeper, but that's about the only good quality of it. Those are readily available. You know, Golden Delicious is one that's fairly readily available, that has all the qualities that I'm looking for as well. I already have one, so I don't need a second. I want to try some other varieties, other flavors. And so anyway, hope that encourages you to go out and try some grafting yourself. It's not terribly difficult. You just need to practice 5 or 10 times. Get some cuttings from a neighbor's apple tree or your own or something like that, and start grafting them up as practice. Cut it, graft them back together. Do it about 5 or 10 times, or 10 times at least. Get your practice in before you do it for real, because you don't have. If you make a mistake, there's sometimes not a whole lot of going back. So learn to do it carefully, and you'll do all right. So okay, God bless. See you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.